Morning, everyone. So we're just going to wait here for Trevor to join us. This is a very special three-part series that we'll be doing with Trevor Odell, Pointe3 Real Estate. Trevor is a senior broker, leasing specialist, Pointe3 full-service broker, as well as a property watch specialist. So he has a passion for baking and breads, and I wanted to bring him on here to kind of share his knowledge and let him just kind of take the reins here. Hi.
Hey.
How are
How are
you?
you?
Good.
Good.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good. Just getting around.
For those of you who don't know, this is Trevor, and we have a very special series, three-part series that we'll be doing, real estate do's and don'ts, and really because Trevor has a passion for baking, and thought we would mix that in with just our overall talking shop about what's been going on in real estate lately. Just want to talk about you a little bit and your strengths. I mean, you've been with us now. How many years have you been with Pointe3? 6?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
6 years.
So
About
you dabble, yeah, 6 years, and you dabble in everything. So leasing specialist, property watch specialist, and a full service broker. And we only have, I think, four or five, brokers that do absolutely everything. And I think that you've been very successful in your business, just in terms of servicing your clients, and you're kind of at this point now where you're doing quite a bit on all different sides here.
All different angles, yeah.
Yeah, which is nice. And then to bring in this passion of yours, you started, I guess, baking bread, 10 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. It was one of those decisions. Like, I was just looking in my pantry, and there was always a bag of flour, and never used it, and it would just sit there forever. And I think maybe the bag of flour I had was 10 years old. I don't know, but it sat in my pantry for forever. I was like, I should figure out how to make use of this stuff. And an old friend of mine, she knew how to make bread. She made delicious bread. She actually gave me one of my first recipes I ever built, which is a braided a country egg fair bread. And it required yeast. It wasn't a sourdough or anything like that, but it was kind of my first dabble into making bread. And I liked it. And I've always loved bread. Since I was a kid, pretty much the only thing I ate at the dinner table was bread. Yeah. That or like a slice of ham. But never any vegetables. My grandmother would be always upset because I would just eat bread. Well, I did this huge spread of all this food, and here I am, just a slice of bread. And so clearly
you probably weren't the only child that was doing that same thing, but you took it to the next level, didn't you?
Yeah. Decided to really figure out how to make this stuff.
Yeah.
And and then a few years back, I wanted to learn how to make a starter and sourdoughs and stuff like that, and which has been kind of a fun little journey, learning how to make it, how to maintain it, and build it, and a little bit of the science behind it. And I'm not, I'm not a baker, so I'm not like an actual expert. Didn't go to school for this. Just kind of picked up and learned where I went wrong and fixed where I needed to, get better at, and just, I don't know, just make it. And it seems to be going pretty good. I make it. My family loves it, and my friends love it, and so.
Well, it requires a lot of patience, I think, for the sourdough especially, right? So, like, I've made plenty of breads at home. Like, you see the no-knead bread recipes and stuff like that, and they turn out fine. But I think this is like next level. It's a commitment, and, you have to be very attentive to the sourdough bread, making process.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, there's a lot more time involved, but it's manageable. So it's not like you're going to sit at the counter for hours and hours and hours of the day. There's just a lot of waiting. So once you kind of get a bread starter going, you mix it, you wait a couple hours, and you mix it again, wait a couple hours, and it's not really a no knead, but it's just a different style of no kneading, where you're more just like folding the dough over and stuff like that. And then sometimes you can have bread that will take 2 days in order to start baking and get through. But just takes, probably about 12 hours, a little bit longer, 16 hours sometimes, depending on the flavors that you want to get out of it. But there's some important steps to make it so it actually reacts right and do what you want it to do. And so, yeah, making a starter is fun. And I lost my starter recently because when I broke my ankle, it was just sat on my counter for a couple weeks, and you can't do that. If I put it in the fridge, it probably would have been okay, but it was just, everything was so hectic, and just being couch ridden for so long, it was just, that didn't turn out. So now I have to start from scratch myself, which is fine. You don't need a starter that's from somebody else. It helps if you have someone that already has a mature starter. You can take a little bit of theirs and continue the process, and then you have it. But it's always fun to kind of make your own. And to do that, it's just flour, water, and time. And there's just a daily regimen of just making sure that you're feeding it, which is just pouring a bunch out and then adding more flour and water and then more time. But to maintain the starter, you do it each day. And you could put it in the fridge for a couple weeks and let it sit, and you bring it out, you feed it again for a couple days before you use it. So if you're not baking bread every single day, then that's the way to go. It's put in the fridge, bring it back out. But for the purpose of actually making the starter is kind of a 2 to 4 week process, depending. And you start it just putting the ingredients together, and then each day you just kind of do the same thing until it starts reacting, becomes bubbly, and it will go, basically you'll have a container, like this, and it'll be like that much in there. And then over time, as it grows, it'll start like bubbling up to here.
Got it.
Just depends on how much you have. Probably for the amount that we're going to do, it'll probably be up to here. And once it gets more mature and starts bubbling, it'll probably be more like to there. It should double or triple, depending. But yeah, you want to get started?
Yeah, we can do that. I had a question. When you're actually using someone else's starter, how much do you need? Like, what is it, you start with like approximately a half a cup, or like, what is that?
Yeah, about a half a cup. So I weigh everything, and I don't use, I use measuring cups just for pouring ingredients, but I don't measure it. I weigh everything, and you get real accurate readings. You know exactly if something went wrong, you knew whether it was too much flour, whether it was too much water. And you can change any dynamic of how you need to with the bread. But if you're going to, once you build your starter, once you have a starter, you maintain it with this kind of the same proportions. And it's 100% hydration, which means that you have, so we're going to be feeding it every day, 60 grams of water, 60 grams of flour, and then you mix it all up. And then, and you just do that. So the same thing when you take someone else's starter, you're going to take about 24 grams of their starter, add the 60 grams of your water, add the 60 grams of your flour, mix it all up, and you do that, and that will get all bubbly and fun.
Got it. Okay, and do you know the conversion of grams into
cups?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. We could ask Alexa.
What's that? There you go.
We could ask Alexa. For those of you who don't know, we're in my home, my kitchen. But good. Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's around, I want to say it's around a half a cup of flour for 60 grams and about maybe a third cup of water.
Okay.
That'll leave.
Yeah, and we could post that too. So
yeah,
good.
It'll get you around, at least a start.
Cool.
The first few days, it's not so critical, but you want to have at least almost the exact measurements that you need, but it's not super critical that you don't. So if you're using measuring cups and you have a quarter cup here and a quarter cup there, that's fine.
That's fine too. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get going.
Okay. Pretty simple. Container.
Okay.
And get your scale zeroed out. And we're just going to measure out 60 grams of flour. And then it doesn't need to be like spot on 60 grams. Like if you have 61 grams, that's fine. If it's just a little bit under, like 58 or 59, that's fine too. But as close as you can get it is the best. And then we're going to grab water. Water should be room temperature.
Okay.
So they say it should be around like 78 degrees or something like that for the water that you use. Up to about 105 degrees. But if you just get a bit of water that's room temperature, at least a little bit warmer than room temperature, it'll be fine.
Cool.
And that is about a third cup of water. And again, we're just going to pour that right over the top of 60 grams. Just stir it.
So also at some point I want to touch on the San Francisco sourdough.
Yeah. So this is all of what it's doing. There's no like yeast to start it, and it's just using the natural wild yeast that's in the air and actually in the flour itself, because the flour will just have natural yeast going on too. And in our area, there's yeast everywhere, so it'll start taking all that, and then over time it starts building and making a culture for yourself. It'll start building your yeast culture. And then, you talk about San Francisco starter. People say, well, if I want a sourdough bread, it must be from San Francisco in order to get those flavors. Well, that's kind of true, except for the moment that you start taking like a sourdough that's from San Francisco, or at least a starter from San Francisco, and bring it here, all the yeast that's around us is going to change it. And it's going to go to Northwest yeast. Mm-hmm. Instead of a sourdough culture that's from San Francisco. And each day that you refeed it, unless you're flying out to San Francisco every single day, grabbing, their flour that they have sitting about and their water and their air, and you want to keep like this little capsule of San Francisco in a, ecosystem jar, then yeah, you could probably do it. But over time, it's just going to change. Yeah. And then you lose that San Francisco flavor that you thought you were going to get.
Gotcha.
Similarly, like an old starter, if someone says, well, I've had this since my grandma started it back in 1932, it's the best starter you're ever going to have. Well, it's a great starter, but again, it still needs to be fed every single day, and it's still the same bacteria that's in our air and yeast and everything. So there's no actual benefit, so to speak, to start using this ancient starter that you found.
Vintage starter.
Yeah, vintage starters. Because again, the process is you're kind of building that starter as it goes, and then you're bringing the new ingredients, so it's kind of refreshed every single day. So it's just a starter that's kept going, and all the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria that's there of the yeast, it's not from 1932. So yeah, you can do it. Like I said, we're just going to start this, and this is really kind of what it will look like.
Oh yeah. Okay, so from here, so I got mine here, right, in this big jar. So is it important to cover it then?
You loosely cover it.
Okay.
You could just put the lid and just not tighten it down, or you can use just plastic wrap and put it over the top.
Okay.
I have just a lid like this, and just put over.
Perfect.
But it needs some air, but it doesn't, you don't want it to be tight fitting or anything. And then from there, the next step is that you're going to let this sit for a day. You can even let it sit for 2 days, and it'll bubble a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the third day is where you're going to have to refeed it. And you're going to use the same proportion, 60 grams of water and 60 grams of flour, but you're going to dump all this out.
Okay.
Except for about 24 grams.
Okay. The 24 grams is approximately a third of it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And I use a percentage of about 40% of the starter.
Got
so
it.
That works out to be like 24 grams of the starter to kind of go from there. There's some people that say that they dump everything out until it's just a little bit on the edge, a little bit on the bottom, and then go from there. It's basically just capturing the yeast and the cultures that are there just a little bit, and then you're adding all the flour and the water, and that builds it all new.
Got it.
And then, and that'll be an everyday thing for the next couple weeks.
Gotcha.
Until it gets nice and bubbly and usable.
Okay. And so, but if you're doing that every single time, then don't you end up at the end, you're just gradually adding more flour and water in on top. So, or is it still staying the same amount and then just bubbling up?
It's just staying the same amount. So like I said, you're dumping a lot of it out, and you're just adding 60 grams flour, 60 grams water. And then the next day you're dumping it out, 60 grams, same thing. So the 24 grams of the starter from the previous day, and then 60 grams flour, 60 grams water, dump it out. And eventually, once it's bubbling and usable, that throwout that you use will be what you would use. So,
got it. Okay.
So you want to make, sourdough English muffins or something like that. You can use the throwout from that. You can use it for pizza doughs. There's lots of different things you can use it for. But you know, eventually once it kind of builds up, you'll figure out for the recipe that you're going to use to make the sourdough bread, how much you need. And then when you feed it, you'll add enough to have enough bubbling up for you.
How do you know when it's done though, when it is ready?
It'll get real bubbly and you'll notice
Okay.
it. And it'll have just a pleasant sour smell. And there's going to be times in this process, you're going to look at it, there's going to be some liquid growing on top. And that's basically just alcohol that the sugars have been converted.
Yep.
You can pour that out or you can mix it right back in. It doesn't make a difference. It's fine. But yeah, it's going to get weird for the next few weeks. And you're just like, why isn't this working? We'll just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And at one point, it'll just be like, oh, okay, that's what it's supposed to do. And it'll just start bubbling like it should. And it'll have just a nice, you know, sour kind of sharp smell to it. I'll go through the process right now, just feeding this.
Let's see it.
Yeah. And it's just pouring it out until you get the 24 grams that you need. And every now and again, I'll completely clean the container. So about every 3 or 4 days, I'll just get either a fresh container.
Got it.
And use that, or I'll just rinse the other container out completely. And then, again, it's just adding that previous starter that you had. And then same thing, add the water to it, and then you mix it all together. And, you know, it should take you like 2 minutes to do. So it's not very time consuming, but you just have to be consistent on it. And it's the moment that basically every 12 hours is what you should be aiming for when you're feeding your starter. Every 24 hours. Yeah. And that will keep it nice and healthy. And then when you actually go to use it, it's 12 hours. So you'll feed it, and then you'll use it within 12 hours of your last feeding.
Got it.
For making bread. But just for maintaining it 24 hours.
Okay. And then you could make all different types of bread. I mean, I think the sourdough loaf is what comes to mind just for me. But what else can you make with this starter?
Can you make with the starter?
Yeah.
Like I was saying, pizza dough is really good. You can make some really good pizza doughs, but you know, a lot of those rustic sourdough breads that get the nice crispy crust. Let's see, I've made English muffins out of it. I've made pancakes with it before. You can actually use, you know, because there's gonna be a lot that you're just gonna throw out. Just like, well, it feels like I'm wasting it.
Yep.
You know, what can I use? And so I've actually kept like little jars of the stuff I've thrown out. And see that, and that was it. I just stirred it up, and that's done. Perfect. Lots of things you can use.
Yep.
And there's many different recipes, and there's a basic kind of recipe for making rustic sourdough breads, and then you can add many different things into it. So you can add olives, raisins, cinnamon, cheese,
garlic,
bacon.
herbs.
All different herbs if you want. Bacon and cheddar is really good. And then you use that for your bread.
What? But you don't have to be fancy on the type of flour you use, or because I know that there's the baking flour and
No, just all-purpose. I try and stick with non-bleached, the non-bromated, no additives or anything. Just I use King Arthur.
Yep, I like King Arthur too.
Yeah, just they're all-purpose white.
Do you use any whole wheat? Have you done that? Because I know a lot of people like whole wheat too.
I have. I don't add it into my starter. You can add a little bit of rye. Rye tends to have a lot of sugar in it.
Yep.
And then that can kind of help beef up your starter a little bit.
Got
I
it.
used to do that at one time, and then I just started making this basic one that works well. All-purpose flour just for the starter. And then once you start getting into making some bread, then you can use more kind of higher protein flours with.
And then putting it in your house, because you mentioned putting it in the fridge versus having it out on your countertop. Is there a certain temperature that should be maintained throughout this process?
So if on the countertop, just room temperature is fine. And then, like I said, if you're leaving it on your counter, you're going to want to feed it every single day. So it's a process of maintaining it every single day.
Yep.
So every 24 hours, you have to, if it's 9 a.m., you have to feed it at 9 a.m. every day. If you do it right before bed, you have to feed it right before bed every single day.
Yep.
If you don't want to do that and put that much effort into it, then once your starter is matured, you can put it into the fridge for a week or two and then bring it back out and feed it a couple times, put it back in the fridge. So if you only want to use it like once per month, that's great. You just need to have about 4 days of feeding it before you want to use it.
Good. And that's because the cold air just slows down the process of like the yeast, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It slows it down, and you know, yeast will live for a couple days. Like I've had starters where I didn't feed it for 2 to 3 days and brought it back just fine.
Yep.
It's not as fragile as what some people tend to think it is. It's like, I got to keep this. I got to baby it, and I'm going to take it wherever I go. And, you know, I definitely recommend naming it.
Yeah.
That's always fun. Yeasty Boys is a good one.
Yeah. That's cute. Kids probably help you and remind you too, right? If you make it kind of like a thing for them.
They do. And they'll pop up like, what are you doing? Can I measure? You know, flour gets everywhere. But
cute.
You know, as with kids, when they cook, everything gets everywhere. We'll go along and see how these work out, and keep me posted on how yours goes. And
I'll
shoot
let
me
you know.
photos.
Yeah, I will shoot you a text, and I'll actually take pictures too. And for anyone who joins and ends up doing this too, we have a couple hashtags for you, making each other accountable in a weird way. Because I know I told you the story about the croissants, because you made just like amazing croissants this last week, right?
Thanks.
And I've tried to I bought the ingredients. I've mentally prepared myself to making croissants, and it is just such a process, right? And you get to it and you're just like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. So this is kind of like the same thing. I was like, I want to make my own sourdough bread, but like, I kind of need to buddy system it up, because I'm not sure I'm going to have enough motivation to get through it. So this is for me.
I know. It happens. No, it's fun. And once you kind of, like I said, it takes like 2 minutes just to feed it. And once you kind of get that routine, it just becomes part of your routine, and then it's easy. And then you can get to the fun part of actually making the bread.
Well, so then the next one, we'll just continue doing this. The next one, we'll check in and see kind of how the starter is doing. And then maybe on the third one, we'll actually have a recipe for us actually baking something. Maybe if you want to pick out your favorite, you know, recipe or whatnot. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit of real estate, I guess, at this point. You know, again, what are you kind of seeing? I know that you've been actually pretty heavily involved in the West Seattle market, which last year, just because of the bridge and, you know, COVID, number one, but then the bridge was kind of like the nail in the coffin, right? And I know people were speculating on what was going to happen over in West Seattle, and, you know, the market's going to tank, or no one's going to want to move over there. But now we've turned a corner, which is kind of the same thing in downtown condos too, that all of a sudden the buyer activity is out there. It's crazy for, you know, condos and homes. And you've had 5 closings, 4 or 5?
Yeah, but 5 closing, coming up on a 6th one.
Just this year. That's crazy.
Just this past year.
Yes.
And it's been great. Like, the activity out there is wonderful. Midsummer last year, it was a little daunting, because I was, you know, after everyone, like the bridge conundrum and everything, and of course COVID, like you said. And so people were weary, like, what's going to happen? And you get out there, and it was slower, and activity was a little bit quieter than what we would normally see. But then, you know, it still didn't take very long. I put a listing out, and it took 8 days that we had a buyer. And I was kind of expecting it to be like 20, 30, 40, you know, suddenly like, okay, where are we at? And then it was a couple days, and it was great. And then, so the time on market out there has been great. And there's plenty of people, there's plenty of buyers out there kind of looking. And I think it's just, they can still be close to the city, but they don't have to be. And now with everyone working from home, it's such a good opportunity, because there's so much out in West Seattle to do. And there's, you know, you got Alki Beach, you got downtown, the Junction.
Yep.
I mean, but yeah, the market's doing good. Single family homes are going quick.
Yeah.
They pop on the market and then they're off. Condos a little bit slower, but they're, you know, it's kind of normal for condos. And there's not a lot of them out there.
Yep.
Comparatively to Seattle.
Yeah, and so your area of expertise, really, you cover everywhere. I mean, you're down south in South Sound area, near the Enumclaw office, and I think that basically, I mean, you come all the way up as far as what, Kirkland-ish on that side.
I work as far as Kirkland.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the furthest north I'll go. But I grew up out here. I grew up out in Issaquah, and moved to Seattle when I turned 18. And have lived there pretty much ever since. So I definitely know the area. And once we had our first child, it was like, well, we want to find a place with a little more land, so that moved us south. But, still my heart is a lot within the city limits.
Yep.
Seattle, Bellevue, Kirkland. I know all those areas, and they're great.
Yeah, that's good. Makes you pretty diverse and being able to service all different types of clients, and on the renter side and on the buyer and seller side too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's pretty much not a neighborhood or area that I haven't lived in at one point or another.
Yeah.
and I kind of want to do a segment where I go through and go to every house that I used to live in at one point.
Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, here's the house I lived in Renton. And this is the house I was in Bellevue. And here's where I worked in Bellevue. And here's my hometown. And kind of go back and forth. I think it'd be fun.
The other thing that I think is fun, you went to New York recently.
I did.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that's pretty cool.
So yeah, I got invited to be part of Ryan Serhant's membership program and be mentored by him and his team. And I got really inspired. I read his book, Sell It Like Serhant, early last year, and it just really resonated with me, and just a lot of his practices and just him. And I've never seen the show. I've never watched $1 Million Listing or anything. It was I just saw the book and I was interested, and I read it and listened to it on audio on Audible, and it was really fun. He had just a great way of just kind of capturing me and kind of my values and whatnot. And so I took the opportunity to head out to New York in the middle of a pandemic, and which was scary in and of itself. But I got to go out there and see him, meet him, and talk about business and kind of how to better myself in business and what I could be doing more, and sat with his team and his marketing team on what they do, and got a tour of his brokerage downtown Manhattan, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice. And I think he just actually came out with another book recently. I saw him promoting it.
Big Money Energy.
Big Money Energy, exactly. Yeah. Have you read that one yet?
I'm almost through with it.
Got it. Is it good? Yeah. Is it better than the first? Are they pretty equal and you come away with
a little different? So the first one is more specific, like real estate. Here's how you sell. Here's what you should do. Here's how you should compose yourself. And this one's more just generalities of how you should present yourself as a force to be reckoned with. And, you want to be like a very successful person. How do you compose yourself, and how do you go about life, and how do you have that, what he says, how do you have that BME, that big money energy, and a lot of things of what he does. So he talked a little about, it's a lot of real estate driven in that one as well. But he's trying to incorporate this could be used for really anybody. And so
I'll have to download it. I do a lot of Audible books, so I'll download both of those. And
now, do you say you read books when you listen to them on Audible?
I do. No, so yes, I do. I read them, but I listen to them. I don't know. It's like a habit of just saying I'm reading it, but I listen to it.
I know. Jess, she always corrects me every time I say this. I read this book. She's like, you listen to it, bud.
You listen to it.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, and it's not. Reading is good for you. Everyone should read a book every once in a while. But sometimes with our busy schedules, it's the only thing that you can get in to kind of learn and expand your knowledge base when you're driving around or doing the stairs or doing whatever.
Especially in our industry, like downtime is very short, and sometimes it's just easier just when you're on the road for a couple hours in between showings and doing what you're doing to just listen to a book.
What do you think this coming year? I know last year was kind of a strange year for all, but this year, do you have any kind of like forecast or things that you're telling your clients about the market and kind of where we're heading this year?
Well, first and foremost, the single-family home market, particularly just south of Seattle, is on fire. And so anyone that has a home to sell down south of Seattle, it's going to go crazy. And I think, what do we hear? There was someone that got 57 offers. Yeah,
57, 62. I've heard all these crazy numbers.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine trying to put together a spreadsheet. And it was like, give me a couple days, I'll figure this out. We'll review it and we'll come back to you. But yeah, it's insane just on that market. So I think that's going to continue. I mean, interest rates are still low. Buyers are still pretty eager to kind of get their hands on some properties. And so I think that market is still going to go wild throughout the year. And within Seattle and the condo market scene, particularly in downtown Seattle, I think it's going to kind of continue doing what it's doing, but it'll get better.
Yep.
I think as soon as, COVID and the vaccines start getting pushed out more, businesses, the economy starts kind of gearing back up, it'll get better. Yep.
People coming into work a little bit more. I think work from home is going to be a permanent solution for a lot of people, but not 100% the solution. So, we've heard different things of, the offices coming in shifts. People during the day are working earlier, for 4 or 5 hours, and the second shift basically comes in the afternoon, or work from home, 2 days a week, and the other days you come in. And so I think we're going to see over the next, year, a shift in, another shift in the mentality of how people are working and coming in or not. So it'll be very interesting. But, I think for the condo part, obviously, there's buyers out there right now. Our pricing just took such a hit last year that we are not, recovered by any means. We're kind of on this little slow, transition into kind of our pricing recovery. But that also means that it's a good opportunity for those buyers out there who were otherwise priced out the last, 4 or 5 years. Have low interest rates, and they're able to jump in now. And I think that's why we're seeing kind of this boost of activity, which is great. Yeah. So speaking to the rental market, because again, you're a leasing specialist, but also you're a property watch specialist. And for those of you who don't know, property watch is our management style service that we offer for condominiums. And you're really successful at that. How many property watch properties do you have right now?
So right now, I think I just have just under 50 properties.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That I manage in the greater Seattle area is a lot, and, but manageable.
Yeah.
And the type of platform that we offer is not a full property management style, so it makes it a little easier to kind of run that many properties. Yep. And but it gives owners just a big peace of mind to be able to have a rental. And know that it's going to be taken care of, and that they're not going to have to be at every beck and call when a tenant says, "Hey, I got a leaky faucet" or something like that. And I'm kind of that middle person that makes sure that the rent gets paid on time and make sure that any maintenance requests get handled properly. And so it's a great program, as for any homeowner that wants to be able to have a rental, but not have to pay like the property management fees that are out there.
Yep. So that'd be like 8 to 10% is the typical. So it's just basically a streamlined process, and it's tailored towards condominiums only, which is great too. Which a lot is, because once you get into houses, a lot of things change. So they just property management becomes different at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Nice. And then you leasing. I have you where your the bulk of your properties right this second. I know you work everywhere, but. In general, where are they at right now?
Yeah, generally Bellevue, Kirkland, and a bit of Seattle.
Yeah. What are you seeing over on the east side for the rental market?
I'm seeing it kind of slow, mellow, just kind of like Seattle is. Not as mellow. We're still finding renters just outside of the downtown areas. It seems like anywhere, like the downtown area zones of Seattle, Bellevue, have been a little bit quieter.
Yep.
And understandably so, but again, it's that difference between condos and single-family homes. Single-family homes generally are going to go quicker. People want that space.
Yep.
2-bedroom apartments and condo units go pretty well, and the smaller ones are taking a little more time to find renters.
Yep.
I haven't seen rates dip too much. I think they've been kind of staying steady over the last couple of years, even within the Bellevue area.
I would agree 100% with that. I think Bellevue's market is a lot different than what Seattle is. And the people, like you were saying, with the single family homes, we actually, Kim and Joe Richard, they had a Bothell house that had like 7 applications put down on it just this last week, and half the people didn't even see the property. So I think that the townhomes and single family market on the rental side is extremely tight. just because a lot of those property owners who, had investment, they've sold their investments basically. And so it's kind of taken from that private single family rental pool. And then a lot of families need space. They can't put themselves into condos or apartments, right? So they need to have, so there's kind of a glut of demand, I think, for single family rentals in general. But speaking to condos and specifically, it's good to hear Bellevue, I agree with you, has been pretty consistent. Seattle, though, I could tell you in the last 9 months, there's not one lease agreement that I've signed that I haven't had negotiations on, or lease renewal. I mean, that's what we're seeing right now. And it'll get better because we're seeing more people relocate here and what have you. But I just feel like you said, the market has been pretty soft for the urban cores. So it'll come back in a matter of time.
And there's still a lot of renters and people that just love being downtown, and despite all this, that's where they want to be, and that's great. And there's, they'll still shift and move around, and especially for renters, always trying to find the best deal that they can.
Yes, for sure. What's the most economical deal in 2 to 3 months rent, free? That's kind of hard to pass up. And so it actually, that takes away, with the rental market, takes away from our buyer pool of properties, because, it's more economical then to actually rent than it is to purchase in the short term. Very interesting stuff.
Interesting times we're in.
Anything else you want to add or kind of close out, just in regards to what you're doing right now?
No, I'm just, just for what I'm doing, I'm kind of getting really back in. I took a good hit to my ankle, so I was out for, what was that, 3 months?
Yeah, and you're still in recovery.
And still in recovery. I can just now in the last probably month start to walk. In the last couple of weeks, really kind of start to walk with a boot. Before I was still using crutches. But, man, breaking an ankle is something I don't recommend anyone to do. Or would, or would I wish that on anyone?
I know. I'm sorry. It's probably so frustrating to kind of just be, operating. But you've also had a really good year, despite you being kind of stationed at home. It's been great.
Yeah. A lot of it, I was able to sit on my couch and make deals happen and get things done and delegate where I needed to delegate, and have an inspection or have a showing that needs to be done. And we luckily have a good team in our office to be able to kind of help us out where we need. And
you're building your team too. I mean, you're added someone just recently to kind of help you with showings and stuff like that. So
I added Stella. Her name is Stella. She's very eager. She's working on getting her license now. So she wants to try and get that, I think, within the next couple months, to be able to start selling homes and whatnot. And so a lot of it, I'm just kind of mentoring the business and do what we do. And she's helping me a lot on the kind of maintenance things and doing errands and stuff. And it's great. That's
awesome. Good. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing kind of you build your business this year. It's always great. I mean, you're obviously a foundational piece of our team. And just overall lovely to work with. So keep it up. Yeah. And then we'll follow this up the next couple of weeks. And for anyone out there who sees this, who says, I want you guys to talk about this, we're open to different topics. We'll probably choose something that's a little bit more targeted next time we chat. And then we kind of could view our starter and hold ourselves accountable on our baking skills.
Yep.
Thank you. And have a great Saturday.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.